Marhaba wa ahla wa sahla fikum, and I hope you're well and having a wonderful day. In today's session, we'll be going back to basics and we'll be talking about the past tense in Levantine Arabic. Before we start, I'd like to highlight that the past tense is one of the easiest tenses in Arabic, regardless if it's modern standard Arabic or dialect. However, in dialect, it's even easier. Why? First of all, we do not distinguish between a distant past tense and a near past tense. It's simply a past tense. 5 minutes ago, I was introducing this session that was a past tense. Earlier this morning, I uploaded a video that was a past tense. 2 months ago, I uploaded more videos that was past tense. You could specify that by adding an adverb for time where you would be very specific when this action had happened. The past tense is one of the easiest tenses in Levantine Arabic because we don't need to change anything in most verbs. Well, we're talking more the regular rather than irregular. And simply, all you need to do is just to add the suffix. With irregular verbs, in Arabic, we have reduced the number of irregular verbs from 4 to 2. So that is even more good news for you guys. So you have less irregular verbs to focus on, which are going to have a look at it again. And finally, the past tense is all about a suffix, meaning it's an attachment you added to the end of the verb, and that's it. Let's have a look at our first verb, and it's a regular one. What do we notice here? We've got the verb katab, which I've highlighted in black, and the one in red, this is what we call it the suffix. So when you say ana katab, it doesn't mean anything. You need to go and add the appropriate conjugation. So as soon as you add an it to the end of any verb, it automatically changes the verb to the past tense. So you can't say ana katab email, I to write an email. That does not work. You have to add an it to the end of the verb and it's automatically going to change the action to the past tense. So when you say ana katabet, I wrote. Ana katabet. Furthermore, to what I said, the past tense is one of the easiest tenses is because of the following. In Arabic, we've got 3 subject pronouns. They do have the same ending. So, ana, which means I, enta, which means you, masculine, and hiya, which means she. These 3 subject pronouns, they do have the same suffix. It, and that's a massive tick for you. Because you've got 3 subject pronouns, they have the same suffix. What better news do you want? It's really easy and straightforward. Then we do have 3 subject pronouns. All you need to do is to memorize the subject pronoun and focus on the last 2 letters. Inti, you feminine, ends with T. Nahna, we, ends with na. Intu ends with tu, ta and u, tu. All you need to do is just to take these 2 last letters from each of these subject pronouns and add it to the end of any verb. And you will automatically change the tense into the past associated with the person you're talking about or with the subject pronoun that you're talking about. Inti ends with a T. Take it and add it to the end of the verb. So we've got the verb katab. Then it becomes katabti. Inti katabti. Nahna ends with na. Add it to the end of any verb and it becomes katabna, we wrote, katabna, we wrote, and that's it. That's how you do it. Into you group of people, all you need to do is just to take the 2 and add it to the end of any verb, and then voila, it becomes past tense. Into katabtu, you group of people wrote. Into katabtu, into katabtu. Let me repeat that again. 3 subject pronouns, you need to pay attention to the last 2 letters of the subject pronoun. And that's why I ask you when you go ahead and form sentences is you go and use the subject pronouns in your sentences like you would say Ana katabat email, I wrote an email, and so on. Inti katabti, nahna katabna, intu katabtu. Then he third person, it doesn't have any conjugation because it's the base form in Arabic and it's one of the forms that it does not accept any irregularity. So the infinitive and he third person is pretty much the same. Meaning when you memorize a verb on the meaning to write, katab is actually already conjugated with he third person. Huwa katab, because with he third person there is no conjugation, there is no suffix. Finally, we're left with henne. Henne, which means they group of people, feminine and masculine. All you need to do is just to add an oo sound to the end of it, because the oo sound is what we call in Arabic the oo for plural, waw al-jama'a. So that refers to a group of people. And that was the past tense with a regular verb. Now we'll have a look at the irregular verbs, the hollow verbs. Why do we name it a hollow verb and how do we conjugate it? A hollow verb is 3-letter root verb. The middle letter is alif, a, an alif, an a. So the middle letter is an alif, as you see here, qal, qal, which means to say, qal, which means to say. How do we conjugate a middle weak verb or a hollow verb? First, you delete the a or alif from the first person and second person, and as you see here, I've categorized it first person and second person here initially. Then I followed it with a third person, he, she, they. So the alif or a, you delete it with first person, second person, and instead of it, you replace it with the vowel a. Then you will go ahead and add the same red colored, as you see here on the screen, suffix to the end of every verb, because without it, the verb is incomplete and would not mean anything. So we would say, أنا قلت, أنت قلت, أنتِ قلتِ, نحن قلنا, أنتم قلتوا. So what do we notice here? The alif got deleted, and instead of the alif or a, we have the e vowel or the e accent instead of what we deleted. So قال becomes قل. قال becomes قل in the first person, second person. Then you would need to go and add your suffix for the past tense. With the third person, the alif or the a comes back again. So هو قال, he said, هي قالت, هن قالوا, they said. And this is everything you should know about the hollow verbs or middle weak verbs in Levantine Arabic. And now let's move to our final weak verbs in Arabic or final irregular verbs in Levantine Arabic. A. How do we distinguish a final weak verb? A final weak verb is every verb that ends with an R sound. If you don't know how to write it, how to spell it, pay attention to the pronunciation. It's every verb that ends with an R for apple. So haka, ends with an R, so that means it's a final weak. How do we conjugate it? The R, you replace it with an E, and that E, sometimes people pronounce it light and sometimes people pronounce it stronger. Plus, you will need to add, again, your red colored suffix for the past tense, because that's how you do it. And without it, the verb is incomplete and it does not mean anything. So, haka, to speak. You would say, أنا حكيت, أنت حكيت, أنتِ حكيتي, نحن حكينا, أنتم حكيتوا. So what we are noticing here, the R became an E. Then we added our red colored suffix, as you see here in front of you. With he third person, there is no suffix, meaning we don't need to flip or replace the R with an E. So it remains A. And we say, هو حكى, he said. هو حكى, he spoke. Then with she third person becomes هي حكيت. And with a group of people, هن حكيوا, حكيوا. أنا حكيت, أنت حكيت, أنت حكيتي, نحن حكينا, أنتم حكيتوا, هو حكى, هي حكيت, هن حكيوا. Let's summarize again. The past tense is one of the easiest tenses in Levantine Arabic for a number of reasons. We don't have a distant past tense and we don't have a near past tense. We simply have a past tense, and we always specify it with an adverb for time. The past tense is one of the easiest tenses in Levantine Arabic because we don't need to change anything in most verbs, and we're talking about regular, simply we need to add a suffix. With irregular verbs in Levantine Arabic, we have reduced the irregular forms from 4 to 2, so very economical. Finally, The past tense is all about a suffix, an attachment you added to the end of the verb. And we do have fixed verbs, we've got fixed suffixes, and that helps us really easily to memorize the conjugation for the past tense. A little tip here: in your learning cycle, you need to conjugate at least 200 verbs in order to get proficient. But this proficient is not about getting the right conjugation, but it's all about being able to pick up the verbs within a sentence, within a speech, when people talk to you, and then for you to be able to delete their suffixes. If they're saying ana, shifit, I saw, and if you are thinking about, oh, he saw, then I could delete shifit. I would say ana shifit kaman, I saw as well. So it's the idea of being able to spot it and change the conjugation rather than always getting the right conjugation. So I would definitely recommend that you conjugate at least 200 verbs in your learning cycle. Great, guys. And with that, I'll end today's session. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. For you all, regardless if you are just starting with Arabic or you are already know this. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, stay safe. Ma salame.